Right guys, I thought I'd do a quick one because a lot of people ask, and I often see, they say, oh, what's ACC all about? And it's something that I see in the comments spread around the internet and stuff like that, and I've done a lot of videos on how Automobilista has been improving rapidly. I've done a few comparisons, how it lines up against the likes of R Factor and stuff like that. But I've never really spoke about ACC and why ACC in and of itself is actually a great sim. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about that now, as to why ACC is as popular as it actually is. So I suppose stating the obvious and getting the obvious out of the way, right? It's the official SRO GT World Challenge game. So they have all the official cars from the 2018, 19, and 2020 and 21 season, I think, and then they've also added some of the 22 liveries as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, a lot of selection. We've got a few cars in there as well, like some of the older ones, and they've also included stuff like the BMW M2 CS. They've added the Ferrari Challenge Evo. There's GT4s in there, Porsche Cup cars, so there's a lot going on, a lot of content, and then also in addition to the European tracks, there's also the International Challenge pack, which includes this one, Kalami, Suzuka, Laguna Seca, and also then they've added the US DLC. We've got multi-class racing on there and a couple of British tracks from the British GT series. We can do mid-race saves, we can do driver swaps mid-race as well, online endurance races and all of that, right? So that's one lap done talking about all of the non-driving positives that ACC brings. Now let's talk about the physics, and this is where ACC really starts to shine. So the one thing that I'll say about the physics in ACC is it's like driving a real car in terms of its weight shift particularly, and its balance on the suspension. You can see there, like as soon as the back starts to swirl around, it's not just the tyre that you have to worry about, it's also the lateral heave side to side that you have to worry about as well, and that can make things worse if the roll bar is set a bit soft. Then on turn-in, you're kind of, when you give it throttle, it's like the front of it pitches up a tiny bit, and you start to lose a little bit of the front end bite that you have over curves. If you abuse it like we just did, it will really unsettle the car. And then you also have to be careful how you present the car to a corner. It's no good just arriving at the corner, you have to present it. You have to figure out, okay, at what point do I come off to let the front end bite? At what point then do I slam the throttle to try and get the car out of the corner? At what point do you be patient? So it's very dynamic, and all of this is felt through the steering wheel. I can feel absolutely everything, all the bumps, the undulations, the curbs, and as soon as the car decides to, let's say, change direction or change load on a particular corner, I can pretty much feel it through the steering wheel, and you can fight with it as well if you need to. So there's a bit of play. There's a bit of play at the edge, but I will say that you've got to also be careful that you don't overstep it too much, because what will happen is when you start getting into the ABS is on too strong while you're turning, that will just destroy lap time. Like, you still have to trail brake, and likewise if you get into the traction control too much while you're still turning, it will cause either a slow slip at the rear that is the most frustrating thing in the world, or again, it's just going to destroy your lap time. And you can see there that you're kind of just waiting patiently, trail braking when possible, later apexes, try to V off the corners. Like a GT3 car will favour that. It's not a high downforce car. Well, let me rephrase that. It makes a good chunk of downforce, but it's still a GT3 car. It's not an F1 car. It's not an open wheeler. You can see here, like, that I'm being somewhat patient, like, getting back on the throttle, but also trying to keep the steering wheel as straight as possible while getting on throttle. can see the micro corrections I'm making, and the reason I'm making these micro corrections is because I can feel what the car is trying to do before it does it, and that's how detailed the feedback can be in ACC. You can literally feel when the back of the car becomes the limiting factor, when the front of the car becomes the limiting factor, and so on. So yeah, a lot of detail, a lot of good detail through the wheel. There you can see, still, although the traction control is on, it can still screw you. We'll see it here actually. Just a lazy four-wheel kind of drift can happen, you know? And then likewise, if you get too aggressive, even with ABS and all of these driver aids, if you get too aggressive and you pitch in, you can see that the car just wants to drift, you know? So these driver aids that people talk about, you know, some people will say, oh, ACC is easier than other sims. You know, you don't lock the wheel as much, you don't light up the rear as much. Like, yeah, because ACC has simulated properly functioning electronic enhancements on the car that prevent that stuff, just like real life. You can turn them off if you really want to, and again, like if I lock up here, you can see how the car just decides to keep pushing off the apex. But like I say, if you really want to, you know, have the hardcore challenge, like let's turn everything off. ABS is off, traction control's off, and so you can see straight away, like it will turn immediately, like it will just go around in circles if you want, you know. And then likewise, if I decide to, you know, go without ABS, if you want to go hardcore, that will be the result, you know. So what I would say to people is that, yeah, you can do whatever you want in terms of, you know, the driving challenge. If you feel that, you know, having these driver assists on, driver aids, they're actually enhancements on a GT3 car. They're not there to save the driver, they're there to enhance the actual performance, because, you know, you cannot brake effectively. Let me rephrase that. You know, in a GT3, they are customer racing cars, right? So they're designed to be bought by, you know, rich guys that want to go racing, pretty much, right? So in order to sell them, they have to be somewhat controllable and drivable by these guys, and then the teams and the manufacturers come along and put pro drivers in with them, and the whole thing just works, right? But it has to be, you have to be able to drive the car as an amateur, basically. So you've got traction control systems, you've got ABS, and they are supposed to be easy-ish to drive, right? To get lap time out of them is a totally different discussion. That's very difficult, because you have to try and keep it out of the TC while, let's say, apexing. You need to have it straight enough to get down on the power after you've cleared the apex. Even with TC on, it will actually give you a bit of lap time. And even with the ABS, I mean, yeah, you can slam the brakes completely, but at the same time, if you slam the brakes and ABS comes in while you have some steering lock on, it's just going to push forward. So you still have to think very clearly about the weight load per corner and how to present the car to a corner. That's the difficult bit, because there's a lot going on. Like, you can feel the weight shift laterally in the car, you can feel it longitudinally. You also can feel if the damper is, you know, too soft or too strong based on the pitch. You can feel the car bottoming out. You can even hear the bangs and the rattles, and you can tell then if it gets way too bouncy, then, you know, your bump stops might need to be adjusted. And all of this is ever present, along with the aero, which, you know, you alter by changing the ride height of the car, front to back, typically. And there you can see a spin on brakes, like a full spin on brakes, just by me, like, abusing, you know, going into the ABS, but pitching the car forward so much on a downhill section that the back of it just says no, enough, no grip. So, you know, to drive it on the edge for lap time, like a setup like this, to get the lap time is not straightforward. Is basically what I'm saying. So the whole idea that some people say ACC is easy, or easier than, you know, enter whatever sim you want here. It's just factually incorrect. I think it's actually quite difficult to be, you know, fast in ACC. Very difficult, in fact, and like some of the top guys, I'm still probably a second or more off their pace. You know, there's an example then of just doing donuts, and here's an example of the ABS being turned off. Lovely. Yeah, we'll leave that there, guys. Hopefully this has given you a bit of an insight as to what ACC is actually about from an ACC driver. It's my main GT3 sim. And yeah, hopefully it's given a bit of an insight as to, you know, ACC versus the likes of Automobilista 2, and which I play quite a lot, and War Factor, and maybe even a bit of iRacing. You know, hopefully it's given you an insight as to what ACC is actually about and actually like to drive and so on. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, as always, and yeah, let me know what you think, and if you're an ACC player, I'd be interested to hear what you think are actually the strong points of the sim, or if I've missed anything, let me know. But yeah, till the next one, guys, cheers.